Yes, I've helped the candidate and answered all the questions which I've asked in this interview. Hey folks, my name is Ravish and welcome back to another video in the series of DevOps real-time interviews. Now, we have a profile with us today. So this person was having around 2 to 3 years of experience in DevOps and cloud-related services. We have only concentrated on Kubernetes, and this was a large interview, but I have taken only the excerpt because there were several other technologies that I talked about, but concentrated around 20 to 25 minutes dedicatedly on Kubernetes. So take out your pen and paper and write down all the questions. I have answered all the questions as I said. So if you're watching me for the first time, my name is Ravi and I create content for DevOps and cloud related stuff. Please do subscribe to the channel because that really supports me to grow. All right. And if you're watching this video on Twitter, Telegram, Instagram, or YouTube short, please make sure to check out the pinned comment, the first link in the video, so that you will be directed to the main video. All right. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so before starting the interview, if you are having issues in understanding the accent, please switch on the subtitles. All right, so let's get directly into the video. Okay, my first question would be, you can answer with respect to EKS or Kubernetes. Both is fine. Okay. How do you ensure high availability and scalability in EKS cluster?
Okay, to ensure high availability and scalability in EKS cluster, yeah, there are various things you have to do to ensure high availability and scalability. So starting off from, it all starts from when you design your infrastructure in AWS. So, for example, making sure you are using two availability zones, launching your balancer if you are exposing it publicly, make sure it's in two availability zones. Yeah, that's for that. Then the load balancer also is distributes the traffic uniformly. Also, then now there are also other things that ensures availability that ensures zero downtime. Other things like using lifeless proof, um, using pod anti-pod affinity. Yeah, ensuring that maybe not having two ports serving the same purpose running on a node. So they should be spread across different nodes. That's antipod affinity. Um, then also making use of EBS, like to store your information on the ports, to store information on EBS volume. Um, and using horizontal pod or to scalar. Yeah. So in case maybe traffic on the application is too much, it can scale out. You can have more ports serving the traffic. Yeah.
See, straight away answer to this question is EKS achieves high availability by distributing the control plane across multiple availability zones. Okay, for scalability, you can use ASG for worker nodes. So by
Okay.
spreading nodes across multiple AZs and using auto scaling, the cluster remains resilient and can handle varying workloads. That's straightforward answer to it.
Thank
Okay,
you. Thank you.
uh, let's talk about a bit on node updates and patching and stuff. Can you explain me the process of updating nodes in EKS cluster without causing downtime?
Okay. Yeah. So if, for example, I've had an issue in production whereby I needed to make an like upgrade or maintenance on a particular server, which is a node. So in order to avoid downtime, all I had to do was to schedule the ports into another node. So I was able to make upgrade on the node and do rescheduling of the port. So basically that's how I'm able to do maintenance on a particular node. So if there is a pod running it from production, I schedule the pod to run another node. Then I do my maintenance.
Okay. Um, See how I would have done it. It allows rolling updates for worker nodes. Okay,
Okay.
so you can update a node group by launching a new by launching new instances with desired AMI version. Okay, and then gradually draining and terminating the old instance. This process
Okay.
ensures that the applications are continuously running during the update. That's how I have done it. Okay.
Okay.
So have you ever done anything related to monitoring and logging with respect to Kubernetes?
Yes.
What
Yes.
exactly
I
you have done?
use Prometheus and Grafana.
Okay, how you were doing it?
Oh, so first of all, I use M to install I use M to install the Prometheus and Grafana. So I install it. I install the Prometheus community. So after that, I install the Cube stack, Cube Prometheus stack, because it makes sure that the Prometheus and Grafana are integrated. So yeah, after that, I create a namespace specially for monitoring. Then after the installation, I change the service type to load balancer, so I can access it via the browser. Then after that, I create dashboards. So I click on that, I click on imports. But since they are integrated, all I need to do next is to maybe use a predefined number to create a dashboard. I always use predefined number. It's numbers I check online. I have a list on my document, so I use them to create the dashboards. So basically, and then I'm able to monitor the, the infrastructure.
Okay, have you ever used AWS CloudWatch for monitoring?
Yes, yeah,
Can
I'm
you
also
explain
using
me
it in my
how does it integrate with EKS?
okay. I've not used it with EKS, but I've used it with ECS.
Okay, then no problem. So basically, you can
Yes,
integrate AWS CloudWatch for monitoring. You can collect and monitor the logs using CloudWatch logs, and additionally, you can configure a specific tool like Fluent D. Prometheus and Grafana is also one thing, and you can use CloudWatch Container Insights to gain deeper insights for containerized
yes,
application. So yeah, that's pretty
awesome.
much about it. Okay. Um, so you have worked on IAM roles and access control as well, right?
Yes,
Can you
yes.
explain me how IAM roles are used in EKS for access control?
Okay, yes. So I'd like to give a scenario. So let me just give a scenario like
Okay.
for example, let's say for example, let me just assume we have maybe like 5 DevOps engineers, and let's say I am the cluster creator, EKS cluster creator. Now after creating, um now those 5 DevOps engineers need full access to EKS admin, yeah, and to access the resources in the cluster. Now it's not going to be easy for me to start adding them one by one to the AWS auth config map. So basically, the best way to solve such issue is to use a trust policy along with EKS full access policy. Then attach it to an IAM rule. Yes, that IAM rule, attach it to an IAM group policy. So make the group policy reference the IAM rule. Then that group policy should be attached to the IAM group. Yeah. So all I need to do is to add the users to the group. Then in the AWS auth config map, I just need to add that IAM rule. So anytime the user, all they need to do is just to go to the console and assume the role.
See, IAM roles basically are mapped to Kubernetes RBAC roles, the RBAC, what we call, right, request based access control. They
Yes.
use AWS auth config map. Okay.
Yes.
This will allow specific IAM users or roles to have defined permissions within the EKS cluster. Okay. Your
Yes.
IAM roles
Yeah.
can be associated with the tasks such as managing worker nodes, accessing the cluster, or even defining the fine grained access control through RBAC. So, RBAC is the catch here. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, how are you integrating Amazon EKS with CI/CD pipeline? Have you done that, or in the current project?
Yes. Yes, I have done that. So in if I want to integrate it, basically I create a credential on the Jenkins server. So I store my EKS credential there, then I reference it. So basically, I'm able to deploy it to EKS by referencing the credential in my pipeline.
Okay. So consider a scenario in which I have containerized applications. Okay. I want to deploy it on Amazon EKS with using any CI/CD pipeline. How will you do that?
Okay. So like I said, if you are using Jenkins pipeline, there's a
Jenkins.
part you
Okay.
can, yeah, add your credentials. You understand? So I add my credentials for the EKS. So so in the pipeline, I use Terraform also in my pipeline. So to set up the infrastructure in the pipeline, then I grant IAM role to that EC2 instance because I run it on an EC2 instance. So during the process of my pipeline, at the process place where I want to deploy to EKS, all I need to do is to reference the credentials in the pipeline, and I'm able to deploy to EKS. But
Yeah,
this,
you can
okay,
use Jenkins as well. There is AWS code pipeline. I mean, that's not an issue. So what you have to do in a typical pipeline, it's general. I mean, it's not.
sorry, they took lights.
That's fine. I can hear you. So in a typical pipeline, generally what happens is you build container images, you push them to Amazon ECR, and then you update the EKS cluster using kubectl, or there is, I think, EKS CTL
Yes,
command
command.
as well.
Yes,
This will enable
yes,
automated and continuous delivery of the containerized application. So this is like 5,000 feet view. How do you integrate? Okay.
yes. So
Okay.
I use the command AWS EKS region, specify the region, update kube config, then the name dash dash name and the name of the cluster. So yes,
Okay.
also, yes.
So let's say you are setting up an EKS cluster for a new client. Okay. Can you describe me what are the networking considerations you will use?
Okay. I want to get a question. You mean networking
Okay,
considerations?
I might not be clear. So can you describe the networking consideration when you set up a new EKS cluster for any client or someone?
Okay. For the networking consideration, for example, um, let's say you have the front end ports, you have the back end ports, and you have the database ports. Now, you now want to enforce a network policy whereby you
Okay.
want only front end ports to talk to the back end ports. You don't want the front end ports to talk to the database ports, only the back end ports. So I use network policy for that. So to control the network rules between the ports, how the ports relate with each other. So
Okay.
basically,
I mean, you're correct, but partially. So, see, EKS requires a virtual private cloud with specific configurations. Okay. This will include
yes,
your,
I
yeah,
yes.
you were saying something.
So I set up my VPC also. Yeah, with
Yeah.
Terraform, I
VPC
set
come
up my
first,
own.
and then
Yes,
it includes subnets for different availability zones, security group.
yes, I do.
You can
Yes,
use VPC peering if necessary, not every time.
yes,
And then EKS also supports Kubernetes network policies for fine grade control over pod to pod communication. So, yeah, I mean,
yes.
you were there, but not almost there, but not exact. Okay.
Okay, let me try and explain again. Let me try.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I got it. That's fine. Okay. So, see, when we have EKS cluster, there are external services as well, or resources as well, right? So,
Yeah,
how can your applications in an EKS cluster access external services or resources?
yeah. So that is for that we make use of services. So EKS has like four services. You have the node ports. The node ports, yeah, allows you to expose. Yeah, it has four services. Let me start by naming the node ports, the cluster IP, the load balancer, and the ingress and ingress. Yeah. So cluster IP only makes you access applications within, like you must be within the cluster to access the application. Why load balancer? Why let me start with node port. So node port allows you, but the advantage of node port is, let's say you have like five services, you have to be specifying the port. It allows you to access the application standard, but on a static port. So that is for node port. So it's not good to use it in production. Yeah, or why you have load balancer. Load balancer is cloud specific. So it allows expose that your application externally to access externally. And you have ingress. So yeah, ingress also, ingress exposes your application externally. So it works with layer 7. That's the application load balancer through at layer 7. So basically, you use ingress and load balancer.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Have you ever done any cost optimization related to EKS?
Sorry, please come again.
Cost optimization related to EKS.
Yeah, for EKS, I have used Cube Cost, and there's an
What
application
is this
called Cube.
cube? What is this cube cost?
Like it allows you to monitor certain things in your cluster. Like
Is it an external
if
service?
maybe
Any external service?
yes, open
Okay,
source, yes, and open
open
source.
source.
Yeah.
What is the name? How
So
do
it
you spell
allows
it?
KUBECOST.
Okay, thank you. I didn't
Cube
know
Cost.
that.
Yes. Yeah. Then there's New Relic, but I've never used New Relic, but I've used Cube Cost. Yeah.
Okay,
So Cube Cost basically like it tells you analyze your cluster, tells you maybe you are using above the maybe above maybe resource. For example, let's say you provision a resource limit now. It tells you maybe the resource limit you provision is too much for it. It tells you like how much resources you are using. Then maybe the nodes you provision, like it tells you also the nodes, like maybe the nodes are too much that you provisioned. Like it analyzes so many things for you. So like it helps you cut down costs. So it tells you ways to cut down costs. Like it also brings up like suggestions. It uses artificial intelligence, like maybe the number of nodes you can use to reduce costs, your resource limits, and various things. Like also applications exhausting resources in your cluster. So keep costs helps you with that. So it helps with cost optimization. I actually think it is the best,
okay, okay. I
but
mean,
I don't know.
there are
That's your
several ways. This could be one of
yes.
those. In
Yes,
my
I know.
scenario, yeah, please go ahead.
I know you can use New Relic, but I've not used New Relic before.
New
It
Relic is
also
also
helps.
fine. I mean, it depends, totally depends. See, DevOps is all over the place. I mean, you can use any tool that you want that fits your criteria. In my experience, what I did was I considered using EC2 spot instances for worker nodes, which can significantly reduce the cost. Okay. Additionally, you can leverage using autoscaling to scale resources based on demand, ensuring that you only pay for the resources that you need. So that's one thing. I mean, I did it long back, so it's fine. Okay. Uh, so there are multiple branching strategies that we have in the world of DevOps, right? So can you
Yeah.
describe me a rollback strategy in EKS and how would you handle a deployment failure?
Okay. Okay. So
Do you know what is rollback strategy?
let's yes.
What
Yes.
is it?
So rollback is opposite of rolling updates. So
Sorry?
for like I say rollback is like maybe after performing rolling updates and you
Okay.
want to roll back. Yeah, you can. So I'll start by explaining as talking about rolling updates. So the way rolling update works is that it incrementally like add new ports, replaces the ports incrementally. Like it does it. Let's say you have 5 ports, so it starts with one, two, like that. So as it adds new ports and deletes the old ports, it adds the information of the new ports. It adds the pool into the pool of the load balancer. Yeah. So for example now after performing rolling updates and maybe you are not satisfied, you want to revert back, you can perform rollback using kubectl command. And yeah, there's a command to perform rollback. So
See, in EKS, you can achieve this by using Kubernetes rollback deployment feature. You can just by updating the deployment to the previous version or a stable version, you can quickly roll back. It's
also do that via the pipeline by specifying
yeah.
the exact version you want to roll back to.
Okay. Have you ever worked on any multi-cluster management,
Yes, I've worked on, yeah.
like
So
development,
yeah,
staging, production? How would you manage
yes.
multiple EKs across different environments?
Yeah, so basically to manage multiple EKS cluster in different environments, to switch between the clusters, I use Cube Contest.
Context. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
context. Yeah, sorry about my pronunciation.
No,
So
that's
I
fine.
use
I
it
got
to
it. Yeah.
yes. So I use to switch between various Kubernetes clusters. So the way we do it, the way I've done it in the past is that we have cluster for um, development, another cluster for staging, and another cluster for production.
Okay, okay. Yeah, correct. You can use context. If you want to, there is one way which I did. We have tools like AWS organizations, right? And we have AWS Control Tower. You can use that to manage multiple EKS clusters consistently. You can use tools like AWS CLI and SDK to automate cluster provisioning, and CloudFormation or Terraform for consistent deployment across various environments. So this is something
Okay.
that you can use. Okay. Can you explain me how a pod to pod communication happens within an EKS cluster?
Yes. So basically, by default, ports are assigned an IP address.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the ports can call each other via the IP address.
Mm-hmm.
But the issue with that is that ports are ephemeral in nature. They have a short lifespan. They can die anytime. So, in order to avoid such, we make use of service in Kubernetes, cluster IP service. So, a service makes use of selector to determine the ports to route traffic to. So, if you want to call another port, you can. All you need to do is the port needs to call the service. Then the service directs the traffic to the port, the port at the destination. So basically, that's how port-to-port communication happens. Why, if you are talking about port-to-port communication in like yeah, basically that's it. Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you describe me a scenario where you need custom networking configuration for your EKS cluster?
Okay. When you mean custom networking, what do you really mean?
Um, like custom
Are you talking about
networking.
setting up the VPC?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yes. So the first thing you need to do in Terraform is to set up your networking,
Mm-hmm.
irrespective of any project you are working on. So you start by setting up the VPC. So I'll start by talking about the VPC. So basically, the VPC is an isolated, logically logical section of the cloud. So it's like a private cloud in the public cloud. So now in your VPC you have the subnet. So subnet is a way to like break down the large network into a smaller network. Yeah. So you start by determining your availability zones. So basically I use two availability zones to provide high availability. Then you have for example, availability zone 1A. I have my private subnet one, my public subnet there. In my second availability zone, I have my private subnet, let's say 2A, and public subnet 2B to ensure availability. So my EKS cluster, I launch it in a private subnet for security reasons. So yeah, so I launch my load balancer in the public subnet. So basically, that's how I set up my networking. Then also by default, when you create your EKS, it provides you with, for example, when you create your EKS and you create your worker notes, your EKS by default comes with a security group by default. Yeah. Then also it comes with your ENI or
Okay.
Elastic Network. It's same with worker note when you create it. Yeah, it comes with those two things by default. So you can also fine grain the security group of your worker nodes if you
Uh,
want to.
okay. Okay. See, this is one way of doing it. In scenarios where custom networking is required, such as enforcing specific firewall rules or integrating with on-premises network, you can use Amazon VPC's CNI, Container Network Interface. They are plugins actually. These plugins will
Yes.
allow for advanced networking configuration within the VPC. So that's how it works. Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
but sorry. Okay, but the CNI comes by default when you install everything.
I think they come by default.
VPC, the AWS VPC CNI, it comes by default.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm done